All right. Hello and welcome to all of the entrepreneurs who have joined the call today, who are watching the recording after the fact. Thank you for spending the time on this webinar with us today. My name is Katherine Grout. I'm an attorney at Copenbarger Law Firm, and I practice in our business and tax department. Today's presentation is going to cover a lot of material. It's going to run the gamut. It's going to be a big spectrum. And because of that, we're not going to go too deep into specific areas of law. If you have questions on a specific topic or you want more depth on a certain category, go ahead and we'll have an evaluation at the end of this presentation. You can submit an evaluation requesting certain content, more of this, less of that. We're really happy to cater the needs to our clients. So I also don't expect to have too much time for questions at the end of this. There's just too much stuff to cover. So if you do have a question, though, please don't hesitate to pop it in the Q&A or the chat. We'll have a recording of all the questions. Even if we aren't able to get to them today, we then have a contact that we can reach out to you with, or you can always email business@copenbarger.com. That's our department's email alias, and we can try and field your questions after the webinar today. All right, so I'm a newish face to this team. I'm based out of San Jose. I practice in many areas of law that impact small and large businesses. I've practiced in contract law, business transactions, mergers and acquisitions, employment law, product compliance, other areas of compliance. I'm also a certified data privacy professional with specialization in US and EU laws. So this presentation is going to be really high level, and I'm going to cover a lot of those categories that I just went over. It's all general information, so please keep in mind, this is not going to be legal advice that's specific to your individual situation. Some of the rules that I mentioned today are general rules, and exceptions may still apply. So it's intended to give you really a foundation and a jumping off point for your discussion with your attorney or your financial advisor, your CPA, whomever. If you attend our webinars recently, a lot of these faces will look familiar. I just want to highlight, our estate planning department is the biggest department we have at Copenbarger Law Firm, but we also have plenty of other services, namely our business and tax that I'm representing a portion of today. We also have a great administration department to handle your estate planning administration itself after your loved one has passed, or if your children are trying to administer your trust after you've passed, our administration department can help. We also have a litigation team that can help defend you in court. So a lot of different areas of representation that Copenbarger can provide to you. And I like to share this picture because it highlights the fact that we're not just attorneys here. We have an amazing support team of paralegals, legal assistants, operation, marketing, people who handle your outreach, communicate with you when, pre, post, attorney. They are all a part of how we cater and serve our clients most efficiently and get your questions answered in a timely manner and really get the care that you need from us. They're all critical and they're all a part of our greater family. And I also want to highlight that we have many offices in several metropolitan areas. So I'm in San Jose. I frequently travel to our main office in Santa Ana. But you can see all of us traveling to any one of these locations to serve clients in these metropolitan areas. We can also perform any of our legal services, almost any of our legal services remotely over Zoom or phone Just let us know which you'd prefer, and we're happy to cater to your needs. Now we're going to go ahead and get into some of the content and the meat of this presentation today. So we have many reasons why someone would be interested in starting their own business. It could be that you're trying to pursue financial freedom or independence, right? Maybe this is a wealth building strategy that you want to pass on to your children, or provide some financial stability, a job opportunity, career, a livelihood for your family too, not just you. It could give you that financial freedom and independence. It could also be that you're trying to take control of your own future. You know, it can be exhilarating and refreshing to break free from those constraints of traditional employment. You know, be your own boss, no longer have to cater to or serve the directions of a manager, right? So it may be that you just want to take control and have some autonomy. It could also be that you have a specific passion or purpose, or maybe you're trying to solve a real world problem. Like maybe you're trying to innovate a device that makes it simpler to even, you know, makes it simpler to fold laundry or something, right? That's a real world problem that you're trying to solve. So it could be that you have a passion in any one of these categories or something not listed here. We're trying to account, in this presentation, we're trying to account for all of those needs, all of those goals. So our topics, like I mentioned, are going to be pretty high level, but all of the steps that any business will face should include some level of each one of these topics that we're going to cover today. First, we're going to look at business types. And the first question you're going to want to ask yourself is how and what do you want to select for your type of business? We're also going to cover a more of a niche category pretty quickly, charitable sector businesses. So we'll cover first mostly for-profit and then not-for-profit. Those are all business options that you can select. Then another consideration is, do you need financing for your business to get started? Do you need financing, you know, in the growth process of your business too? What are some ways to go about that? We're going to touch on that. And then another category, really critical, is if you have any branding or marks, names, logos. How do you protect those when you're actually marketing yourself, putting yourself out in the marketplace? We're also going to discuss internal IP too. So internal and external IP or intellectual property. And then last, we'll close with kind of running a checklist of various types of legal compliance that you could encounter, especially as you're starting out. So we'll touch on all of that today. It's a ton of content. Let's get started with business types. So in California, you register a business under a state, and in California, there's several different entity types that you could register. We'll go through all of these. First, we'll start with some that actually don't require registration. They're created by default. Sole proprietorship and a partnership, a general partnership. Then we're going to go into some other flavors of a partnership and switch gears over into corporations, limited liability companies. Those two you're probably a little bit more familiar with as the stereotypical business. And then we'll touch on the nonprofit corporation and some charitable trusts. So we're going to go really high level, discuss what each one of these is so that you can select which business would be right for your endeavor. So for a sole proprietorship, just like I mentioned, this is formed automatically, right? You start operating as a business and you haven't registered anything, you're already a sole proprietorship. You need to report that income on your personal income tax return. Essentially, you are the business. Profits and losses flow through you. There is no legal protection or legal barrier offered for a sole proprietorship. So some of the serious downsides to this are that it can be hard to transfer the business or to share in the business, right? If you want to take on another owner of your business. It is also very challenging to get funding for this type of business. Typically, you'll have to have something actually registered, at least an LLC, to get funding from a third party. And then the biggest downside is that there's really no legal liability protection. Your personal assets are fully exposed in this with this type of business. You are the business. There is no separate legal entity for a sole proprietorship. So think of it that way. The biggest pro, though, is that there's going to be no cost to create this, right? It is created automatically. But the downside can be pretty severe, especially if you're engaging in anything that could be considered a risk activity, a high risk activity, or even has like any it could be open to any potential legal claim. We're going through starting with simple, and then we're going to more complex. So a slight step up in complexity is a general partnership. So this is where you have two or more individuals that are coming together in a single business endeavor, and they're sharing in profits and losses. This doesn't actually need to be required and can be formed automatically, but it is highly recommended that if you are intentionally going about forming a general partnership with some one other person or multiple people, that you have that registered and that you get a governing agreement in place that tells you the specific rights and obligations of partners and establishes the governing operations and principles of your partnership and the division of profits and losses. So and that's your partnership agreement. One huge drawback is still that partners have unlimited liability. So we don't have any protections. A benefit, though, is that you still get that pass-through taxation, which is essentially that any of the business's income is being reported on your personal income. So tax is pretty simple. Then moving another step up with complexity. In a general partnership, all of the partners are considered general partners. In a limited partnership, there are two distinct flavors of partners. There's a general partner and a limited partner. A general partner is usually the one who does the business operations management, and they are subject to that same unlimited liability of a general partnership. So a general partner has unlimited liability. A limited partner usually has no personal liability. So there's limited partners could be investors that you then give this title and this ownership right of a limited partner. Now, a limited partnership does need to be filed with the Secretary of State, and it can have multiple general partners as far as structure and multiple limited partners. So there's many different ways that you could set this up, just depending on who you want to have those management roles, and then how you want to share, how you want to contribute to the business. So the profits and losses are going to be governed by the partnership agreement, how they actually flow, who has what ownership, who shares in what percentage of the business's profits. That's all going to be defined in your partnership agreement, which is really key that it's carefully drafted and for your specific business. It is very risky, especially in this type of business and almost all partnerships, to not have a partnership agreement that is very catered to your business. Again, pass-through taxation, just with every partnership here. Another flavor of partnership is the limited liability partnership, and this one's pretty unique. In California, it's only formed by licensed professionals. So our law firm or your accountant's firm, those are licensed professionals that tend to form a limited liability partnership. This is usually the best option for licensed professionals. Now, the partners themselves do get some limited liability, but generally they're still personally liable for any of their own misconduct or any of the misconduct under for anyone who's working under them or at their direction. So, for example, our paralegals at our firm, the attorneys are responsible for their behavior. And a limited liability partnership must be filed with the California Secretary of State. Then the partnership, I think I have already sort of covered this, but the partnership agreement is going to, as with the others, provide rights and responsibilities of the partners. The profit sharing is generally equal unless the partnership agreement says otherwise, and same pass-through taxation. Now, if we take a step back to the limited partnership that we talked about with a general partner and limited partners, another variation of this is a family limited partnership. I just want to highlight this. This is really intended for holistically look at this option within your entire estate planning. This is a potential entity to form for your own estate planning. Typically, you'll have general partners be, parents, limited partners be your children. It's when you want something to pass down and some intergenerational ownership of family assets, this could be an option. There are other options, so look at this holistically in your entire estate planning. Okay, so we've covered sole proprietorships and a couple, most of the flavors of partnerships here. We go from simple to complex. We also go from unlimited liability to some limitations to liability, mostly still you're exposed with a partnership. Taxation is generally the same. What I want to highlight here is just to go through what is the most common use of each of these. So a sole proprietorship, really, it's typically not advisable if you have the funds to set up an entity because of your risk of exposure to liability. If you have initial funds, I would highly recommend actually forming an entity, because then you can potentially get some of the benefits. But for common uses for a general partner, that's any two or more individuals that want to jointly own a specific endeavor. And then for a limited partnership or a family limited partnership, that's depends on how you want your organization to be structured generally. Do you want to have some individuals, either investors or children, to be limited partners with less liability exposure, but also be able to share in some loss in profits or profits of the business? And then again, limited liability partnership, the last category, the last column here, really just for licensed professionals in the state of California. Outside of California, different story, but inside of California, licensed professionals. Now we're going to go to corporations, limited liability companies, more what we traditionally think of when we think of businesses. Now, the corporation, when we looked at partnerships, the owners were partners, right? And the managers were partners. For a corporation, those two roles are technically split. They can be the same person, but they're two distinct roles. A shareholder is the owner of a portion or all of the corporation. A board or a director, part of a board of directors, is responsible for the management of the business itself. And then a step down, you can also have officers. You don't have to have officers depending on what you need for your business. You can have officers that are more engaged in day-to-day management, that are involved in specific roles. That's your C-suite, your CEOs, COOs, CPOs, lots of alphabet soup. I could go on and on. It could also be your VPs, SVPs. Those are engaged in specific day-to-day management of your business. The board oversees the overall strategy of the business and approves decisions that the officers then execute on. Your managing documents. You first start by filing articles of incorporation with the California Secretary of State. Then your bylaws are the equivalent of the partnership agreement. They're a longer agreement that dictate how the business is run. The biggest benefit to a corporation is this limited liability protection for shareholders. So any shareholder or owner of the business is not subject to personal liability for decisions that the business makes. So if the business does something and it incurs a potential claim, right? If the business infringes on someone's trademark or copyright or IP, and someone files a claim against the business for doing that, the shareholders, their personal liability, their personal assets are not exposed as long as the business has been run appropriately as a separate entity. This is known as the corporate veil. It is essentially a shield around the corporation that allows the shareholders to not be personally penetrated for the decision-making of the business, right? So the owners of the business are not personally liable for the corporation's debts or liabilities. That's the biggest benefit to having a corporation. Now, counter. Let's look at one of the downsides. Tax for a C Corp. So there's a couple of different flavors of corporations. C Corps and S Corps. Well, two. So C Corps, that's your larger entities, right? An S Corp is kind of it's a smaller version, usually. The S Corp has a limitation on the number of shareholders that they can have. They can't have more than 100 or they have to have less than 100 shareholders. So the C Corp is great for bigger businesses that are planning on IPOing or issuing an initial public offering, being publicly traded. The C Corp, however, has this tax drawback, which is a double taxation. Any profits of the corporation are taxed, and then the profit shares to the shareholders, the dividends, any distributions, those are also personally taxed. So you get double taxation, which does not exist in S Corps, which are pass-through taxation. However, let's look at LLCs, because S Corps, a lot of the benefits of that lack of double taxation, for example, are also solved by an LLC, but the LLC has additional benefits. So let's look at that as a potential option instead of an S Corp. So for a limited liability company or an LLC, the owners of that are going to be members. The managers of that are going to be members or managers. They can have one or the other or both. The management style can be a manager managed. So you define this in when you actually draft up the operating agreement for your business, which dictates how your LLC operates. And Managers essentially would be the equivalent of a board of directors. Members would be shareholders. They're the equivalent of shareholders. They are the individuals that own, or corporations that own, the LLC. And a person or entity can be both. You also have then member managed, and you'll select this when you form your entity. Member managed essentially means that all members are equal, right? It's kind of like a general partnership. Everyone's just equal. And all members have equal management rights. One of the big benefits, so like I touched on earlier, is that is tax related. So for an LLC, you can actually elect how you'd like to be taxed. You can elect to be taxed as a C Corp, or you can elect to be a pass-through. You can elect to not be subject to that double taxation. There may be some reasons why you want to be taxed as a corporation. However, for most small businesses, it's going to be a key benefit that they can be taxed as a partnership, and they don't have to be subject to the double taxation. Depending on how much revenue you take in, it's for small businesses, you're probably going to want to be taxed as a partnership, and the ability to flip between that taxation is also key. You can elect how to be taxed as it suits your business needs. So there's a lot of flexibility with an LLC. Another huge benefit, though, is that the requirements for maintenance and formation are not heavily arduous, right? There's not too much you need to do. So one thing we didn't talk about with corporations is that corporations have to keep minutes, and they have to host annual meetings for their shareholders, for their board of directors that record actions by the board. It's very specific, some of these requirements. However, LLCs they allow this flexibility. We do encourage, if you have an LLC, to record a lot of your business decisions, but there's no actual statutory requirement to keep minutes, to keep business minutes, to host, to keep any of those formalities in your business operations. So the LLC offers that all the protections with almost none of the downsides of a corporation. So that's why for a lot of small businesses, an LLC is just going to be the best of all options. But I'm highlighting all of them today because we can have unique situations, and it's important to assess all of your options when you're looking at which business to select. But an LLC is often the best option for small businesses. Like I already mentioned, it's relatively inexpensive and it's easy to organize. There's less legal formalities, just so much flexibility with an LLC. It can also have a limited duration or an unlimited duration. You can really cater it to what you need. So recapping the second set of entities that we went over and comparing them to a sole proprietorship. So this first column, I plugged back in sole proprietorship so that we could kind of refer back to what we're not getting when we don't form a corporate entity or business entity, whether it be a corporation or an LLC, and comparing that to some of the attributes of an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp. When you look between when you move through these columns, typically it still moves from simple to more complex. Also generally follows smaller to larger, not always though. But the key is going to be, that liability line. Unlimited liability for a sole proprietorship, limited liability for an LLC, that corporate veil, that shield that protects your personal assets exists with LLCs, S Corps, and C Corps. LLCs are the easiest ones to maintain. They're going to be a great option for small businesses. S corps are also a good option for some small businesses. So don't, it will vary depending on your situation. And then C corps, generally, these are all general principles, right? Generally, it's going to be better for companies that are planning on IPOing, issuing an initial public offering, or they need venture capital funding, any number of reasons. Larger endeavors likely will, or they need more funding, may be more beneficial to get a C corp. Okay, now I'm gonna go pretty quickly through charitable sector businesses. There's a couple of different flavors that I just want to highlight, but if you're thinking about starting a nonprofit or engaging in any exempt entities or public good entities, we can also help you with that. So charitable purpose has a pretty broad scope in California, relief of poverty, advancement of education, religion, promotion of health. It could even be a government or municipality purpose, right? They're serving the public or some other community benefit. The legal forms, it takes a couple different flavors. The most common being a nonprofit corporation. You could also have a charitable trust. You could be an unincorporated association, which is akin to a sole proprietorship, right? Just unincorporated for public good. You could also form a different for-profit legal form and then register as a charity. Most of these, with the exception of unincorporated association especially, most of these must or benefit from registering with the California Attorney General's Registry of Charities and Fundraisers. So the first most common, the nonprofit public benefit corporation. This has to be for a public purpose, not a personal gain. Profits and gains or dividends cannot go to individuals. Taxation, now this often will qualify for exemption from income tax, both federal and state. You must register and report to the California AG. Then a mutual benefit corporation is different. This is something that's to the benefit of their own members. So if you think about like a trade organization or even your local HOA, those are examples of mutual benefit corporations. And typically registration is not needed. Then you also have religious corporations specifically organized for a religious purpose. We categorize this differently. It is tax exempt and generally doesn't need to annually register, whereas a nonprofit corporation for public benefit or public benefit will require annual registration. And some other legal forms that we touched on, you could create a charitable trust, just have an unincorporated or form an LLC and an LP and then register that LLC or LP limited partnership with the California Attorney General. Lastly, there's a flavor of for-profit that generally is not going to be tax exempt, but you can still claim a charitable or social purpose. So you can pursue a worthy purpose or provide a return to shareholders, which is, so providing a return to shareholders is an obligation of a for-profit corporation. But also pursuing a worthy purpose may be counter to that. So you can register a social purpose corporation or benefit corporation and be able to do both. Now, another option, typically for larger companies, because this is going to be a little expensive to get, is a B Corp certification. This is going to be equivalent to a fair trade label, for example, or a Rainforest Alliance label. So it's a certification on top of your for-profit business that says that, you know, you're serving the public in this way. You have to generally put statements into your governing agreements and also do an initial impact assessment of your entire business, periodic impact assessments, depending on your certification level. But this is a separate third-party certification option that may be beneficial to some. All right, so that was a lot. That is all the step of selecting which entity to form. Now we're going to go, once you've formed your entity, do you need funds? Let's talk about briefly, what are some available sources to finance? How do you get your business off the ground? What do you need to actually start creating a product or spending time giving a service? Where can you get sources for funding? Family and friends always an option if it's there. You can borrow from investors or other outside sources. For only bigger entities or larger or, you know, C Corps, then you could be looking at venture capitalists or private equity funding. Aside from where the source comes from, what you really want to carefully consider here is, what debt are you taking on? What are your payment? How do you have to pay it back? What are the actual terms? And what are you giving up, right? What's the control you're giving, if any? Are you giving up a board seat? Are you giving up, are you making one of your investors a limited partner in your general partnership or your limited partnership? What level of control are you giving up? What equity or ownership in the profits are you giving up? You want to be careful what you're actually, you know, balancing all of those when you're looking at who and where and how to finance. Other options for small businesses, run through the options. Government grants would probably be the best. Then you got government loans, which have good rates, small business loans, but be careful with the small business loans particularly. You have to read the terms carefully. They're going to vary significantly what their terms are. And then there's always the option of some alternate, more creative lending loans like crowdfunding, Kickstarter, something like that. That's an option, right? What you'll need for all of these, though, is actually a good business plan, right? Something that you can pitch to your potential investors, or something that you can post on your Kickstarter page, right? Something that you can present to your local bank, something that you can present for your small business grant. You'll have to have a good business plan in place. Now, this is really business and finance focused, but you can definitely benefit from having an attorney look over some of those loan terms, right? Or help you draft your business plan. That's where you can have an attorney step in to help you with the financing part. Next, we're going to get into the other topic. So securing your intellectual property. What is the scope here? Could be public or it could be private information, but it's anything that is, you know, your proprietary intellectual property. Names and branding, creative works, could be your inventions or trade secrets. Now, trade secrets is the last one we're going to go over. That's that non-public information. When it comes to your branding, your company name, logos, slogans, anything that kind of you associate with your good or service and is part of your image, right? Your business image can be words, phrases, or symbols, can be a registered mark with the USPTO. Now, the benefits of registering: once you register, you have, and you can keep this renewal indefinitely. You just keep renewing it. Once you register, you have this certificate with your trademark. This supports it. Realistically, this supports you even before any legal claim in court, whether you're trying to defend yourself or fight against someone else infringing on your trademark. This supports your cease and desist letters, which are really going to be your primary your primary defense with anyone using your name or your logo or anything too similar to that in their own products and services. Anyone trying to infringe on that. An attorney, to get an attorney, we can certainly do this. Get an attorney to send out a cease and desist letter if anyone is infringing on a registered trademark. We can also register the trademarks for you. Something to keep in mind: so your company name can be registered. Your product lines or product names or product slogans or logos, those can all be registered. They're registered typically under a specific category of good or service, and they can be registered under multiple categories of good and service. One key, though, is that you can't just register something. You have to actually intend to use it in the marketplace or be already using it. Marks, trademarks, service marks, they need to have either an inherently distinctive characteristic or acquired distinctiveness. What I'll say here is that, generic names, marks cannot be secured. So we wouldn't register something that is generic. Now, stuff changes, right? When Kleenex first launched the Kleenex name brand, that was a completely unique, inherently distinctive name. Over time, Kleenex became how we refer to anything that is a tissue paper that you use to blow your nose, right? It became generic when products and trademarks get so commonplace that they become generic. That's when you run the risk of losing your trademark. It could even be Uber, right? To Uber somewhere almost lost its distinction because people were using it as a verb. So think about this. We're looking for something that is unique to your business. Work with either us or an IP attorney, someone who can file a trademark. Usually you're just looking for someone with some experience in trademark law, and they'll be adequate to file trademarks for you. Copyrights. So copyrights are different, and these often get confused, but think of copyrights as creative works. They're original works of authorship. So they're poetries, novels, film, music, stuff that you write and create, architecture, plans, right? Those all have copyright on them. Copyright is actually automatic, but registration is, again, similarly a great defense. I will probably recommend, if someone seems to be violating one of your copyrights, whether it's registered or not, registration is going to be your best defense in a cease and desist letter, right? So it's beneficial to register it. Also, the duration for a copyright is not indefinite like a trademark, but it is very, very long. Also, a registered work. So a registered mark can qualify for statutory damages and attorney's fees. So if you actually get to the point where you have a litigation claim that you're either trying to fight or defend, registration will be extremely helpful. Then we have patents. So think of patents as inventions. You can have utility patents or you can have design patents, but they're basically inventions that are novel and non-obvious. Now, patents can be expensive to file. I do not It depends on what your needs are. They are expensive, definitely, and I do not recommend skimping on them either. It is very important that you get a patent attorney that is specialized in the area of law that you need the patent under. And they're also experienced in that area of technology too. So I mean, I highly recommend don't skimp on it. It's often best to look for an attorney with the best expertise for a patent rather than the cheapest option. So that it's expensive but worth it. You need a patent that is enforceable. If you need a patent. We don't have any patent attorneys, but we can certainly provide a referral. It's a very expertise area of law. Lastly, in intellectual property, we're gonna go over just trade secret. So what is a trade secret? It's internal non-public information that gives you a competitive edge. So it could be your product strategy, your customer portfolio even. It could be your financial terms with customers, you know, what prices you're offering to certain customers, something that gives you a competitive edge. All of that internal information that you wouldn't want shared publicly. For this, so a trade secret is going to be a trade secret as long as it's kept confidential and internal. Your best line of defense is a contract. Get a solid non-disclosure agreement or confidentiality agreement in place, or have a confidentiality clause in your service contract. So for customer contracts, you'll probably have a confidentiality clause. Excuse me. For employees or contractors, you also need confidentiality agreements in place when you hire new employees in order to protect your trade secrets. Think about also if you're going to be pitching your business, pitching an idea, pitching a product idea, customer strategy, anything that you're doing external to your business. Get a solid NDA in place or non-disclosure agreement in place before you're pitching so that you have contractual protections if who you're pitching to takes your idea and runs with it. You need to get an NDA in place, and it's not a heavy lift. Get that in place if you're doing any of these activities and sharing internal information. All right, well, we have made pretty good time, so I hope you're hanging in there. The next big topic that we're going to go through is legal compliance. Now for this one, there are a vast number of categories that could apply depending on what type of business you have. So I'm really here to highlight some of the laws that could apply to you. I'm not going to go in depth with any of the requirements, but I want to discuss what you need to investigate further and what could apply to you. So first, any registered business, anyone doing business in a specific location usually needs a business license. And it could be, I mean, you'll need to probably register with the state that you're operating your business in. And any counties and municipalities, cities may have a registration or a licensing requirement. Typically, you know, the shortest license may be a year, but it could be a 5-year license for your business. You'll want to make sure that you're registering anywhere that you are operating your business. This is going to be a pretty nuanced question to ask, and it is really helpful to have an attorney weigh in on this because, you know, think about someone who operates mostly online. Where do you need to register if you're mostly online? Which ones apply? You know, where your business is located under your actual, you know, formation documents under with whichever state you're formed in. You may need to register for multiple states. You may need to register for many counties and cities. It just depends on your business operations. So it is really helpful to look into that. a little bit more deeply to make sure that you're not gonna get slapped on the wrist by any city that you're operating a business in. Also think about the fact that you could have, if you're a licensed professional, you could have a separate obligation. Contractors, architects, accountants, attorneys, legal professionals, could all have or do have professional license requirements. Then, another thing to consider, this is a big area. So the contracts that you enter into, your commercial agreements. They could either be a vendor agreement, what services you're getting. It could be, it includes your internet service provider, who you're getting supplies for, XYZ product that you need for your office or anything like that. Those are all your vendor or service contracts. What you'll want to watch out for, especially in them, is can you get your money back, right? If they violate the terms, or can you get your money back if you need to cancel for some other reason? What are the cancellation rights? That's going to be really key for most small businesses. And then for customer service contracts, you're probably going to be most concerned with, are you protected from the actions that your customers have, or the acts that your customers take? Is your liability limited to the actual fees that you're going to recoup under that contract? Or importantly, can a customer just cancel on you? Can they avoid paying under the contract terms? It's really helpful to get a contract in place that is suited to you if you have to negotiate one of your vendor or your customer contract templates. It's important to probably have an attorney look at those terms, to have them reviewed and see where could you get in trouble if something happens. And then also consider, if you're an online business, click through terms, right? Are they enforceable? Has someone actually agreed to them? There's a lot of nuance and consideration for this. If you are an online business, a lot of those acts can be, a lot of those compliance needs can be shoveled to a third party, but you have to make sure you're protected. And next category we want to cover are people, operation, and employment. If you have employees, what are you considering? So, or what compliance needs do you have? You have compensation law requirements. You could have mandatory training, and compensation law, a lot of these are going to be state and federal. So you have to look at a lot of different types of laws. And an attorney is going to be key in assessing that. Mandatory training. California has mandatory harassment training. You may also have information security training that needs to be performed because of the data that you collect, whether it's financial data, personal data, any other type of data. You may have information security requirements and laws that could specifically apply to you. Then you also want to be mindful, any hiring, firing, interviewing employees, you'll need to follow equal opportunity employment laws. And if you have, most businesses will have OSHA requirements, or Occupational Health and Safety Administration requirements. Especially this came around during COVID, when we needed to all decide what were going to be the obligations for reporting. We also need to be mindful of our employees' privacy. So much to navigate there. So a lot of those compliance considerations are very complex. And we can provide a lot of information in all of these areas. Next, we have one of my more specialized areas of expertise, data privacy regulations. So if you have a website, does it collect personal contact information? Do you have employee data, employee information, employee files? Do you have, maybe you have a pop-up table at a fair, a local fair, and you have a sign-up sheet. how are you supposed to protect that personal information that you're collecting? Data privacy laws are going to apply to so many small businesses that don't even realize it. It's important to be really specific in a privacy policy on your website. If you're collecting any personal information, it's important to keep confidential records secure, clean desk policies, make sure everything's under lock and key, record breaches, don't share personal information unless you're permitted to do so. There's a lot of operational lift that you need to think about that you can do with us or with another attorney. Walk through what your risks are, where they are, try and do an assessment of the personal data that you're collecting and what you need to do to make sure you're compliant with data laws. This is a constantly changing landscape for regulations. Other things you want to be mindful of are marketing. Are you telemarketing or cold calling? You'll need to follow the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Are you doing email campaigns? You'll want to make sure you're following CAN-SPAM laws. And a lot of that for email campaigns is going to be adhering to the unsubscribe laws and requests that you get. Another consideration is if your business is open to the public in any way, you're required to follow ADA regulations. If it's just open to the public as an office, then there's you need to make reasonable modifications. But if you're a restaurant, a daycare, you'll need to make sure that you're adhering to whatever requirements are enforceable under the ADA for your business. Most probably last, you also may have some industry specific regulations that could apply, like if you're selling a regulated item, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, some other regulated item. Or if you're manufacturing materials, you could be subject to some environmental regulations, health and safety, restaurants like we just mentioned. Sale or manufacture of a food and drug. It's a lot of these laws are more broad than people think. So be careful, be cautious, consult an attorney, get some advice. You could also have import and export laws or other third-party board certifications. For small businesses, the most practical solution is often going to be putting these obligations onto a third party, putting these obligations onto a vendor, contracting through someone. For example, you may have an HR service provider that you can put some of the burden of your HR requirements onto, of your employment law compliance obligations to. That's going to be a really practical solution for a lot of small businesses. With that in mind, though, what you'll want to make sure is that you're actually protected under the contracts that you're setting up and that you cannot be held personally liable or your business isn't liable. Are you adequately protected? Is that vendor that is providing you with their services, are they actually required to indemnify you, to fight and to hold you not responsible if there's any legal claim that you're subject to? It's going to be really key that you make sure that your contracts are correct and in place and protect you. And actually, vendor management is really important here. All right, so that was a lot of content and we did squeeze it into a small amount of time. What I want you to take away from this is what conversations, when you're starting your business, what conversations you need to have with an attorney, or where can an attorney help, whether it's with Copenbarger or with a different attorney, just where are you supposed to get some legal counseling? We can help guide you to the correct business for your legal needs, help set it up for you, help make sure that you maintain your compliance. We can also help draft and negotiate those commercial contracts for you and consult you on certain regulatory compliances that may impact your business. We can help you start that business, get compliant, and protect your branding too. If you need any trademarks, or if you have copyright that would best be protected by registering any of that, our firm can help you with that as well. So with that, I know we're at the hour. I really appreciate everyone who sat in tight here. I hope you were able to take away some useful information and now have direction. I wish all of the entrepreneurs on this call or listening after the fact success in their business. And we're definitely just here to help. We want to see you pursue your passion, grow your small business, get to without any hiccups. Okay, we're here to help you and avoid potential pitfalls that you could fall into. We're an experienced firm, and more than happy to step in with a lot of this help. So that wraps all of the content for today. Last, anyone on the call who's able to submit a digital evaluation, I highly recommend, please, if there's some content that you didn't like here, if there's content that you want more of, more specific, please submit an evaluation. We're happy to try and cater the content that we provide to you for free based on what you actually want. So you can, it should be popped into the chat, that digital evaluation. At any time though, you can email us at info@copenbarger.com. If you have a question specific to business and any of the information that I presented today, you can email business@copenbarger.com. And you can also visit our website, rewatch this video that's going to be posted on either our website or our YouTube channel. Follow us to be aware of any upcoming webinars that may be helpful to you, and any legal needs that you may have that we can provide. So you can also always call us if you prefer. Please just get in touch. And I'm going to leave this open for just another moment. If you had any questions that you directed to us in the chat specifically, we will be able to, I do recommend that you send those questions along to business@copenbarger.com, but we will have a recording of those questions and potentially be able to address them after the fact. Okay. All right, well, thank you all so much. Go ahead and I'll leave this open, but that's it for the content today. So if you want to drop off, please feel free. I'm going to leave this open just so that you can close out any digital evaluation that you have open. But please, thank you so much for joining and sticking through with this. And I hope you have a wonderful day.